Hey man, say man, it's the one and only Jamaica man. Back at it again with an extended week quick break. We're shooting today on Wednesday, and I thank you very much for your patience for a numerous of reasons. This week, I had the opportunity to speak with Phoenix Healing, a forum based on healing through Kendra K3N underscore DRA on Instagram and the other social media outlets. Phoenix Healing can be found on Facebook. That is the word Phoenix and healing with a 3 instead of an E. I had the opportunity to speak with five fortunate souls about the father wound. She is currently in her fourth week of that, and if you have not check that out. And if you are in need of healing on that particular subject, please tune in because the forum in itself, the recording will be published later on this spring. But what I received from it is something that is valuable to listen back to. It's a three-part series, and it took some time. So I took my time after that, kind of like becoming less vulnerable and back into my body to be able to present to you what I'm thankful for you participating in. Because last episode, 18, has about 569 views, whether that's from 00 to 35 minutes. I appreciate you taking time to spend with me and take some purest game for your name, if you will, in the game of basketball. Thank you, Thoughts by Ty, for continuing to contribute. And this football season just ended, but you can follow Thoughts by Ty on Instagram as well as Twitter. You can follow Eat Sleep Blitz, our podcast, through Ism Sports on Spotify and Anchor. And you can follow up to date as the season progressed, to just recap, if you will, at blitz underscore sleep underscore eat on Twitter. Please stay tuned for the Phoenix Healing Father Wound Forum coming to a ear near you. And today I don't want to waste much time, but I have a lot to cover in regards to college basketball because it's looking a whole lot like March. And that means there's some madness around the corner as conference tournaments finish. And there's some standout players that I want to touch on before we get into it. But most importantly today, we'll be covering what I believe is the big board of best players available thus far from what I've seen in the conference tournament, and then the March Madness tournament, if you will, would justify or switch some things up. Thank you very much to the Hoop Intellect, if you will, for publishing a larger base system of players that I was able to narrow down things from. So shout out to Caitlin Clark in the women's basketball game out of Iowa. She's returned this week, and this week she has clinched a Big Ten title with her Iowa Cyclones against Michigan, a very stout opponent. She finished that game with 38 points, 11 assists, and 6 rebounds. So the highlights that we saw in week 17, or 18 rather, proliferate themselves, and she contributes to a winning situation, which makes her game not only talented but very serious and focused towards the next step possibly. But she's a sophomore, so we shall see. Paige Buchers is also a sophomore, rising sophomore, and I would love to see them compete at some point this season or in the future. Secondly, I was checking out Chet Holgram against USF this week, or last week rather, and he looked mighty number one pick overall because his ability to be what he is as far as his skill is concerned is now matched with his physicality and height. And I'll touch more base on that, but he finished this game against the USF Dons, my alma mater, with 21 points, 15 rebounds, and 6 blocks. That was outstanding, and he's at least top 2, and that game made him look like he was not number 2. I have to give that to him. They end up losing to St. Mary's, but you want to just get a good justification of these players, like I said, and if they're able to win, that's even more confidence going to either the next season or the next level. Now, as we transition into my draft board, I want you to understand that I am describing the best players available based on transcendence. Something in their game stands out and can be, 1, marketable, 2, help your team win, and allow for them to develop other areas of their game in a way that will carry a franchise. Now, this particular class does not have a lot of players that stand out in that way right now, but I don't think that this class is a class that you can slouch and say, well, there is no value to that. So I kind of stay away from calling classes weak because there shouldn't be a such thing when you have teams that can develop these players, and we're undermining the fact that most teams like Sacramento, they choose not to develop their talent. They get lucky with a player like Tyrese Halliburton, have value, and then trade him out. Or you have a very good Domantas Sabonis, and he plays so long that he becomes valuable to Sacramento and you make that trade, but it's not necessarily a difference maker because they're developing their games and what they do well individually, and there is no culture that's developing talent to create a culture. So that will be the difference in, having the talent and not developing the talent, if you will. But right off the bat, we're going to get into it. As far as the men's game is concerned, Jaden Ivey, to me, is the best prospect available out of Purdue because of his transcendent athleticism that is made for the game of basketball, and you'll see that in the secondary break or when he's headed downhill to attack the rim. And he play makes so well that he can play on or off the ball, and this sophomore season for him has allowed for him to improve his jump shot, which is key at the next level. And if you mirror him against any other players this week, he lost to another talent in this pool, Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin. But the difference between those two players is Ivy is more athletic, and that stands out before you go into, well, can he shoot, can he pass, etc. Because you want to sell the game, and in addition to him selling his game, he's very prolific in many areas of the game, and you could possibly use that as a way to lead the troops and possibly carry a franchise. Then I'll go Chet Holgram out of Gonzaga because of his ability to be 7'2" and highly skilled. But what he showed in his outing against the Dons for me is that his athleticism isn't too far behind. He may seem frail, if you will, but Kevin Durant seemed that way, and Giannis seemed that way as well. And weight programs later allowed them to be 270 and still agile with their frames. So I believe that is a trajectory that you can lean on because it's in play. And if a team like, let's say, Detroit at 1 or Detroit at 2, if they have the ability to take Chet, I would understand them building their front court in that way. Then I'll go Jabari Smith Jr. as the best jump shooter in this draft. He lacks an in-between game to be able to develop anything else if they take that game away from him right now. Not saying that he will not be able to do that, but Jabari Smith Jr. gives me Kerry Kittles vibes, and his ability to get a shot off at 6'10" is something that you can't pass up if Jaden Ivey and Chet are off the board. Then I'll go A.J. Griffin. In my opinion, he's the best player on the Duke Blue Devils because of his offensive sphere, the things that he's able to do right now, coming off an injury, allowing him to potentially finish this season as a double-digit scorer, starting the season off the bench at Coach K's last season. It shows me that instinctually there's a lot of things that he does well that he's not thinking about on the court, and he does them when you need him to do that. So possibly he can be a part of a franchise, and possibly he could carry a franchise if his health permits, a la Jimmy Butler, finding the right situation to lead people that are willing to be led and compete at a high level. A.J. Griffin has that, and Jabari and A.J. are lineages of their father's name, Adrian and Jabari Sr., and we appreciate them being developed and prepared for the next level as a shooter and an all-around offensive threat with defensive upside. Then I'll go Paolo Banchero here at 5 because his ability to be 250 and 6'10" you can't take away from him. But he's the best facilitator on the Duke Blue Devils, and he hasn't always been in a position to do so. They took him off the ball at some points this year, and I really like that Giannis spot for him, being able to flash to the elbow and make decisions there. Maybe it's a mid-range shot, maybe it's a drive to the basket, but you don't want to give him so much space to have to create, and that's why I feel like he wouldn't be the number 1 overall pick for me because of his lack there of ability to create all around the floor. He is able to get players open with his ball handling, dribbling, but you don't want to have him 26 feet away from the basket to do it because it's going to be hard to blow by good defenders or people of his stature and speed. Maybe at some point, but not right now. So a team that could develop that while allowing him to be a great facilitator could work. He is currently endorsed by Cade Cunningham right now to come to Detroit, and that would shake some things up in their front court, but I just don't know how much upside those two guys with great IQs. I do think Banchero has the highest IQ in this draft outside of a guy I'll mention in just a moment, but I think that's not what you're asking for him to do if he's the number 1 overall pick. So you take that pressure off of him and you put him at 5, and you're like, okay, if I can get a steal at 5, hypothetically, if he's still there, great. If a team takes him beforehand, the expectations to me may be too high to allow for him to successfully develop his game, but you never know, and that window of opportunity is still there, but in my opinion, he's the 5th best player available. Then you have Shaedon Sharpe, a new entry to the list, according to what I learned through Hoop Intellect, and his ability to either come out and play pro basketball this year or stay at the University of Kentucky because you're not necessarily used to him. He has not played on this team this year, but he is practicing, similar to Enes Kanter prior to at Kentucky. He's a big guard, but not a guard that uses his weight. He's capable of playing in space off the dribble and playmate, and that's something that you can't pass up. I believe if A.J. Griffin wasn't able-bodied as he is to be a 20-point scorer potentially with that three-headed monster that they have at Duke, I would put Shaedon there, but because we don't have the sample size on Shaedon, we'll leave him right there because he may not even come out, so I don't want to put that much attention into his game. But Benedict Mathurin has game. He's playing on the fastest team in the country, the number one team in the country in the Arizona Wildcats, and he is a very good contributor on that team. At times he takes over, and at 7, it's a great spot to pick him because he may or may not be able to do that at the next level, but his athleticism, his improved jump shot, and his ability to create is something that you can't pass on past 7. Then you go with a similar type of player, but more of a ball handler in Jaden Hardy. He plays with the G League Ignite, the second team experiment that you allow them to play against G League talent fresh out of high school or prep school to be able to develop their game. And that will be their 1 year that they'll have to develop instead of going to college. And he has his moments. He's had a few 25, 30-point games thus far. But the lack of consistency in his decision-making as well as outputs put him in a position to be, I would say, high side. He could be a ball handling Bradley Beal at some point where he may become an elite shooter, but that's not his greatest skill right now. When Bradley came in as an elite shooter that could rebound, I think he has the tools to develop into something similar, but you don't want to put him in a position where you have to have him do that right now because he may have a lot of inconsistent nights. Then we'll go to Ty Washington out of the University of Kentucky, the little engine that could, not necessarily in stature, but he does it all. He's able to play, make, and have the ability to shoot in rhythm, make the right decision, and he has one of the best IQs in the pool, if you will. And then if a team like New York is there, I will go there and grab him because you could develop him to be that guard. He gives me Elfrid Payton type of situation or Tyrese Halliburton situation where they make all the right plays. It's just that he's in between that where he's better off-ball shooting right now, and you want him to be able to shoot on the ball. He exemplifies that in a secondary break, and you would want him to be able to do all of those things that Elfrid Payton does as a playmaker, Tyrese Halliburton does as a scoring playmaker at the next level, and the Knicks could use it. Then we have Jeremy Sohan out of Baylor University. He's a gentleman that jumped out to me this year, and he was on the team, if I'm not mistaken, last year, and I didn't see him like that. But he's a forward that can be interchangeable, and a theme of this particular draft is that you have a lot of forwards that can play the 3 or the 4 depending on what situation they're in. And I believe Jeremy has the highest upside out of a lot of guys that you see playing at college, and he's not necessarily playing the starter minutes per se, but he has his moments similar to Perry Jones Jr., if you recall him, at Baylor, if I'm not mistaken, before he came into the NBA. But I think Jeremy has the ability to catch off the ball and shoot, and he gives me Trevor Ariza vibes, but he can actually defend the 4. So look out for him, and I think if a team like my team, Portland, is there, that would be somewhat of a Scotty Barnes type of, whoa, why would you get him so high? And then he proves you right. He has the potential to prove you right. But the leading scorer in the country, next at 11, Keegan Murray, is a guy that you can't pass on if you need a score at that particular spot. Jaden has the potential to score with more upside, but Keegan has the ability to give you the Danny Granger. I can score, get a bucket on anyone. If you need me to do it, I can. I'll contribute in every other way, but give me the ball, and to an extent, I'm an option to get everyone out the way and I can score. Also, Portland can use that type of player because we need another option to take pressure off of Dame. I can't really think of another team off the top of my head that can contribute with that. He has the ability to do what Kuz is currently doing in DC right now, but Kuz is playing a point. You want an off-ball version of that, and Keegan Murray has the ability to do that. Then Johnny Davis out of Wisconsin will be my 12th overall best player available because he's capable of doing what Keegan Murray does, but he has more of a Monta Ellis type of feel to the game, and people flash him with Devin Booker, but he has similar scoring spots as Devin Booker. Johnny Davis has had a great week. He clinched the Big Ten title against the number one overall prospect in the Purdue Boilermakers, and he was fearless. He had 37 against the Boilermakers prior to this contest, but he won when the count was 16, and he made all the right plays. Although Jaden Ivey came back and made a brilliant shot per game, it worked out to where his team made the best last play, and that's somebody that has a competitive nature and intangible, of course, but he is capable of being a player that can compete and get you wins, I would say, in the right situation. Then you have Blake Wesley out of Notre Dame. He's a two-way player that gives me Randy Foye vibes. He's a little taller than him, and he has upside to be able to contribute, maybe as a shooter, maybe as a scorer, but he's going to leave it all out there every night. And I think it's hard to pass up on him. With Patrick Baldwin Jr. at 14 is a player that had a lot of hype like Banchero early on, but has subsided, but he still has tools to be what you see in Keegan Murray or what you see in Johnny Davis in the right situation as well. And I believe he's towards the 6'8", 6'9", and you can't teach that. And you recall Paul George and Kawhi Leonard being picked around this 14-15 area. Then Atari Eason out of LSU is a player that I would take at 15 as my best player available. If I would say San Antonio. I saw a mark through Hoop Intellect that San Antonio drafting a power forward, maybe Chicago going for Atari Eason would be ideal. He gives me an offensive version of a Tyrese Thomas where he's aggressive, hard-nosed, at the glass, if you will, but he understands that his game and maybe his money will be made from the perimeter first, on the glass second, and defense third. He's a guy that you should take a chance on at 15 if none of the players I spoke about beforehand are available. And the key about these top 15 guys is versatility. They're more versatile than the guys that I'll be naming later on. Not necessarily in skill, because you have to have a wide variety of being able to shoot, score, pass, and dribble to an extent to be in the NBA. But a lot of the guys 1 through 15 are versatile and can play or guard multiple positions. Bryce McGowan's out of Nebraska. He gives me Eric Gordon vibes in his genotype, but he's also a scorer as well. I believe he's on the 6'6", 6'7" side. And in the right situation, again, he'll be able to contribute as that guy, not so much as Johnny Davis, but to the same extent if you develop him correctly. Then you have E.J. Little out of Ohio State. Let's see. Is that E.J.? No, I skipped a few. Excuse me. Let me double back. So 15 is Tari Eason. 16 is Nikola Jovic, a Slovak small forward shooting guard out of Slovenia, of course, that can possibly become what you see in Mario Bellinelli in his time with the Spurs, or a Evan Fournier at the Knicks right now, where he is more athletic than those guys, but he's offensively fluid like them. Then you have at 17 Ochai Agbaji, if you will, if I'm pronouncing that way. Abahi, excuse me. Ochai Agbaji out of Kansas, two-way guy, has the ability to give you upside, and similar to a lot of the Kansas forwards, he's able to contribute in the right situation, of course, but he has the athleticism to be able to guard right now. So I would rely on that. And then Bryce McCowell's out of Nebraska. They just beat Ohio State, which was, I believe, the first time they've done that in a long time. And he competed against E.J. Little, who is a small ball power forward, a la to Thaddeus Young. And his ability to score is something that stands out on film. You just hope that he has the athleticism to guard and be a constant contribute like the Grant twins at some point for this game being perimeter-oriented going forward. So I project him out. Thad Young, Horse twins, possibly. Kennedy Chandler at 20 is the best point guard in the NBA draft. Now, the guys I mentioned early on could play point guard, but your pure point is Kennedy Chandler. And I would say, if you go back and look at this contest when he wasn't playing against Kentucky and how Ty was able to play very well, this time around, Kennedy Chandler was present. He was hurt the first game. Second game against Kentucky, they blew them out. And it was largely because of his fearlessness to score on the break but make the right decisions in the half court and as well as in tough situations. He made it easy for his team. And if you need a point guard, you need to make sure you have one for the future. You draft Kennedy Chandler, maybe at 20 because of his skill set, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's drafted beforehand by a team that has a need for just a point guard. Then you have Julian Champagne at 21. He's a guy that's been on the radar from St. John's for the last 2 years. He's a scorer, not necessarily a defender, but he has the height to be able to develop into that. And then Johnny Juzang is a similar off-ball version of that at 22, where they possibly can come in Johnny Juzang's case, he gives me Aaron Aflalo vibes, catch and shoot guy. There's another guy he gives me vibes about, I can't recall his name, but he played two guard in Dwight Howard's championship appearance. He was the two guard there. Whereas Johnny can shoot better than Aaron at this time, and the guy I mentioned, I'll probably drop him down in the comment section. But Johnny Juzang is someone that I would take at 22, not expecting him to play make, not necessarily expecting for him to score, but he can do so in the right situation. Mike Miles is the second best point guard in this particular pool because he's able to do what Kennedy Chandler does. And he might have a higher scoring ability rather, than Kennedy Chandler. But I don't know long term if being a playmaker is what he desires to do, and maybe he becomes a sixth man. But if you need a guy, Kennedy Chandler is gone, and you need somebody to lead, and you want to cultivate that, I think Mike Miles is a guy out of TCU that just beat not only Texas this week, but Kansas this week. And TCU isn't necessarily on anyone's radar to win or be ranked, but you have to consider them going into March. And that is one of the guys I would be like, let's watch if he gets a bid or even if he goes to the NIT to see, how he can control a game similar to Kennedy Chandler, and he may improve his chances. Mark Williams at 24. Mark Williams at 24 is the best big man in this draft. You haven't noticed, besides Chet, there aren't any big men that you draft because the need immediately is to make sure you have versatility at the guard and forward spot. If you need a big similar to Kennedy Chandler that is a lob threat, that plays in space, has the potential to develop an offensive game, he's that guy. In my opinion, he is the best player on the Duke Blue Devils, whereas A.J. Griffin is the most skilled. Vancaro is the best playmaker with the highest IQ. And all of that together with a player that I'll also mention later on, honorably, they may be able to make Coach K's last season a good one, all around. Then you have Christian Coloco out of Arizona, the fastest team in college basketball. He also gives me similar vibes to what Mark Williams does. He has the fluidity to be strong in space, but he doesn't look so calculated with the ball offensively, and that's good. He plays in space great. So you want to see his shuttle drill to be able to understand if he can stay in front of switches, if you will. But he's also a rim protector with high upside to continue to be a great offensive player in the post if developed correctly. Then you have Ishmael Kamagate out of France. He's similar to that, but he's more on the forward side, if you will. The last three guys, Mark Williams, Christian, and Ishmael, are bigs that are versatile in their skill set, whereas Ishmael is a forward. You wouldn't want to play Mark or Christian Coloco at forward. They just have the ability to defend forwards and defend the rim primarily. Ishmael could possibly defend certain centers, but you want him to be able to develop his game similar to Semi Ojeleye out of SMU. He played previously with Boston, and now I believe he's with Milwaukee. He has the ability to be that, but more so in the slender Hakeem Morg variety. Then you have out of Kansas Christian Brown. He gives me Andrew Caruso vibes, and his ability to be, in this case, Christian seems a little taller on the 6'6" side, but he's a spark that you can add value to your team off the bench or in spot minutes as a starter, catch and shoot guy. Not necessarily next year, but over time, he can contribute and make plays to keep your team in it or win it, like Caruso is doing previously with the Lakers and now with the Bulls. Get well soon. Then I believe one of the best shooters in the draft out of Davidson at 28, Hyun-Jung Lee, is one of the best floor spacers with size that potentially can defend at the next level. He is capable of shooting on anyone at any time, and he knows his spots. So that's perfect for a team that needs to put in a guy that can shoot. You give him the reps. You tell him how many shots he's getting, and he'll calculate that into his game and help your team win. If I'm not mistaken, you'll see that. He'll be one of those statistical players that you could check his PER and know how well he's contributing to a team at the next level. Then you have Iverson Molinar, who is a guard, but he's more of a two-guard, less valuable, in my opinion, than Mike Miles. But if you give him a chance at 29, maybe you could develop him like, I wouldn't say he's the same as Gilbert Arenas, but he has a Gilbert Arenas genotype. Jordan Hall out of St. Joe's, he is a similar Johnny Davis, Keegan Murray, Nikolai Jokic as a fluid, versatile, small forward, maybe two guard in his case, but he could possibly play two forward spots, a guard spot, and if you develop him, his instinct to score can carry over to the next level. Lastly, I have a few honorable mentions as we round out as people that I would like you to keep your eye on, and maybe they will crack my top 30 at some point. Matteo Spagnola is a player out of Italy that also gives me Mario Bellinelli vibes because he has a similar stature, but he has a playmaking of, I wouldn't say a Rubio, but a playmaking of a Mario Bellinelli. I think that's probably where I'll leave it because his ability to play fluid in space, he could be under the rim, he can get to the rim at times, he can shoot the ball, but you're just not sure if that could translate against the physicality of the NBA. But he could crack the first round. Um, Deron Seabroad is a player that I appreciate as well. Similar versatile forward that may or may not translate to the next level, but you could develop him to be that. I believe he's out of NC State. Now, Trevor Keels had a great game last night. That's my next honorable mention with 21 points, and he gives me Corey Maggette vibes. Not necessarily the athlete off the bounce as far as jumping is concerned, but he has more of the jump shot that Corey Maggette developed when he was a Clipper and they were making that run in 2004. So although I would love to put him in a conversation with his fellow counterparts, I just feel like he's outside of the top 30 because of his lack thereof ability to, I would say, create off the dribble, but he makes the right reads and he's a sharpshooter at times. You just need that to be more consistent. Then you have Amano Baycoot out of the University of North Carolina. He's a 6'9" forward center and he has guard skills. So you want to see if that could develop a la Montrezl Harrell, and his motor is just as high in my opinion, but I believe he has more of ability to make a jump shot. And if you have a pick maybe at the beginning of the second round, if he improves in pre-draft workouts and shows all of the versatility that I've seen on screen, maybe he can hit the top 30. And last but not least, a Delonta Brown out of Ohio, if I'm not mistaken, or Dayton, excuse me. He gives me Robert Covington vibes, and he's able to shoot from space. He's a hard-nosed defender, and he attacks the glass, just lacks the versatility off the dribble to be able to stand out like the other forwards that I have ahead of him. And that's just about it. I will post, again, the list verbatim on Twitter, but my original list is in correspondence with Hoop Intellect. That is Hoop Intellect with 3 L's. You can follow me on Instagram and Twitter at JamaigaMan, JamaigaMan, on Twitter and Instagram, and my podcast, UOP, yeah, you know me, that is on Twitter, yeah, you know me, UOP, yeah, you know me, and Unpopular Opinion is what UOP stands for. I have 2 years of content previously on the pod through Anchor and Spotify, and you can catch up with last year's draft and compare it to this year's draft as far as how I select things, but most importantly, I leave you all with a quote. It is easy to search for greener grass elsewhere, but it's much easier to water your own. So remember, it's in you, not on you. Please take this as a merit to how you feel about these players. But as a purist, I feel like I haven't dropped the ball since my last mock draft, and I think this would be beneficial to anyone that feels like their team should be better and really begin to look at it in a way like, all right, these guys may not pop out, but they can add value. And you continue to be the best version of yourself and add value in the best way you know how, and continue to be open to learning new experience. Thank you for your time. Thank you for all of your support. And until next time, it's in you, not on you. Yes, sir.